Jesus Christ rising from the dead, Muhammad splitting the moon, Moses parting the Red Sea. Now there are only really two ways to refute a miraculous claim. The first is to address the specific miracle being asserted, and the second is to address miracles as a whole.
Miracles, by definition, are the least probable occurrence of an event.
No way to demonstrate that there cannot be a natural explanation. The only thing we can ever do is show that there's not currently a natural explanation.
I want to talk about guys coming back from the dead after being buried for 3 days. It's all nonsense.
The truth is, even if we had multiple contemporaneous eyewitness accounts of the miracles of Jesus, this still would not provide sufficient basis to believe that these events actually occurred.
Miracles play a central role in the Christian faith. Our whole faith depends on one particular miracle, the resurrection of Jesus. The Bible confirms this. In the letter to the Corinthians, Paul even says, "And if Christ is not risen, then our preaching is empty, and your faith is also empty." Many people think that miracles are so unlikely to occur that you might as well conclude that they are impossible. Even worse, some even think that there's no way to make a reasonable distinction between a miracle and an unlikely natural occurrence. If this is true, then we cannot know whether Christianity is true, and then Paul might be right. Our faith is empty. In this video I will show you that there is a way to make a justifiable distinction between a miracle and a natural occurrence. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The Thinking Dutchman. My name is Kyle Lange and my goal is to help you see that Christianity is both reasonable and true. This is the first of a series of episodes about miracles. Stephen Woodford, known from the channel Rationality Rules, presented a case against miracles. He asked an important question. Let's watch.
This question is, how exactly can we distinguish a miracle from an unlikely natural occurrence that we are yet to comprehend? It's a very simple question, but it's a brilliant one, if I do say so myself, because it forces the proponent to bear their burden of proof, rather than allowing them to shift it to you by appealing to ignorance.
This is actually a really good and important question. If we cannot answer this, then I think Stephen is right. It's
game over.
The burden of proof is on the one making the claim. So if a Christian claims that a miracle has occurred, then he should be able to explain how we can know this. So many people in the past and even nowadays have claimed that a miracle has occurred, and too many times they were proven wrong. We need to answer this question if we think that the argument for miracles is valid. Fortunately, there is a good answer to this question, but it takes some time to unpack, so bear with me. I noticed that this question is very similar to the core question intelligent design theorists ask, which is, when are we justified in inferring that an intelligent cause rather than a natural cause is the best explanation for certain phenomena? Intelligent design theorists have developed two criteria to distinguish between a natural and intelligent cause. Making this distinction properly is important in many scientific fields. For example, when archaeologists find something carved in a stone wall, they first need to determine whether that shape was caused by a natural process such as erosion, or whether it was carved for a purpose by an intelligent agent. The criteria can help with this. It occurred to me that if God is the intelligent cause of the universe, then this is precisely what a miracle is. So in that sense, a miracle is an intelligent cause. But is that always the case? To answer this question, we need to define some terms. A miracle can be defined as an intervention of supernatural power in the natural world. To really know what this means, we need a good definition of the natural and the supernatural. Let's start with the natural. What exactly is the natural? In the book Miracles, C.S. Lewis explains it well. The natural is what springs up, or comes forth, or arrives, or goes on, of its own accord. The given, what is there already, the spontaneous, the unintended, the unsolicited. In other words, nature is what happens if you take no measures to stop it. We all know what this means. A good illustration is an ancient and deserted city. It takes time, but a deserted city will eventually be taken over by nature because nobody interferes with it. All natural events are causally connected to each other. No event exists on its own, but each is part of the whole system. Lewis goes on. All the things and events are so completely interlocked that no one of them can claim the slightest independence from the whole show. Lewis sees the whole show as the great interlocked event. Events that cause other events. Philosophers have come up with a very original name for this type of causation: event causation. It is contrasted with agent causation. Nature can thus be defined as all things that are causally linked by event causation. So from supernovas to a meteor hitting the Earth, to the arrival of the first life, all events are in some complex way causally linked. A philosophical naturalist believes that there's nothing outside of this. According to him, this whole system is causally closed. There's nothing beyond it. It exists on its own and can therefore be seen as the ultimate fact. So to summarize, everything that is part of and completely dependent on the great interlocked event is natural. The supernatural is therefore everything outside of this. The supernaturalist agrees that there must be an ultimate fact whose existence it would be nonsensical to try to explain, because this fact is itself the ground or starting point of all explanations. He disagrees, however, that nature itself can be the ultimate fact. According to the supernaturalist, nature cannot explain itself, but needs a supernatural explanation for its existence. This explanation is the ultimate fact. Another name for this fact is God. Lewis says the following about the supernatural fact. The one basic thing has caused all other things to be. It exists on its own. They exist because it exists. So God is not part of the natural. He is something completely different, and the natural depends on him for its existence. If you agree with these definitions, then it follows that every miracle, every interference with nature through supernatural power, by definition, must be caused by an intelligent agent with free will. Why? Well, because there are only two kinds of causation: event causation and agent causation. Nature is everything that falls in the category of event causation. So a miracle cannot be in the category of this type of causation. Therefore, it must be in the category of agent causation. For example, if some sort of force instead of an intelligent cause would be responsible for the origin of the known universe, then that force did not have a choice to make the universe. Otherwise it would not be a force but a person. If it did not have a choice, then it must have caused the universe because of some natural law or some regularity. So then the force would actually be part of the great interlocking event. In other words, it would be part of the natural. It created the universe on its own accord. The force and the universe would therefore both be part of nature. It would still be one system. If there was another force that created the force, then the story remains unchanged. It would be possible that supernatural forces exist outside the natural system and inside another system. There could be different natures that are not causally connected, but my point is that only an intelligent agent can have the ability to do something supernaturally in the natural world, because only a person would be able to be outside the interlocked systems and do something new in it. Defined this way, you could say that a miracle is simply any intelligent cause. But now you might think, when humans do things, they act intelligently, so is everything we do a miracle? Well, the answer to this question depends on your worldview. If you believe that humans don't have free will and are part of nature, part of the great interlocked event, then no. But if you believe that humans have free will and act independently of nature, then yes. But this is not the focus of this video. I want to talk about the kind of miracles most people would see as miracles. Miracles like the ones we read about in the Gospels. Jesus, who walked on water, who calmed the storm, who fed 5,000 people with a few pieces of bread, and who physically rose from the dead. I want to talk about the kind of supernatural interference with nature that is not and cannot be caused by anything we know in the physical world. Events that can only be explained by a supernatural intelligent agent like God. So from now on, I define a miracle as an act of a supernatural agent in the natural world. Are there good criteria to show that a miracle has happened? I think there are. We must do two things in order to justify that a miracle has occurred. We start with an event or multiple events, such as the historical facts surrounding the resurrection of Jesus. The first thing we need to do is show that an intelligent cause rather than a natural cause is the best explanation for the event. The second thing we need to do is showing that a supernatural agent rather than a human agent is the best explanation for the event. So how do intelligent design theorists distinguish between natural causes and intelligent causes? To answer this question, they generally refer to the book The Design Inference by mathematician William Dembski. Dembski developed with great precision and detail two main criteria for determining when something has an intelligent cause. He calls this type of explanation design. These criteria are: the event to be explained is highly improbable, the event corresponds to an independently given pattern. A pattern is given independently of an event if we can formulate the pattern without any information concerning the event itself. Dembski calls these events specified. Let me illustrate. Suppose I play poker with some friends and after 5 rounds we all get random but common card combinations. Then this event is highly improbable because the chance to get any specific combination of cards is astronomically low. But we can attribute this event to chance because there is no independently given pattern in the combinations. But now suppose that after playing 5 more rounds, my friend has gotten 5 royal flushes in a row. Without doubt, I would know that this is not simply the result of chance. Somebody intended for this to happen. My friend is probably cheating. The intelligent design theorists would agree because getting a royal flush 5 times in a row is highly improbable and it conforms to an independently given pattern. We know that a royal flush is the best combination to win the game. My inference is therefore that it is done purposefully by my friend. In other words, it is due to design. These criteria are helpful if we want to see whether a miracle has occurred, because we can eliminate many supposed miracles. A good example is the flying fish Stephen Woodford mentioned in one of his videos.
Throughout history there have been numerous accounts of flightless animals raining from the sky. And needless to say, on just about every occasion, someone somewhere has asserted that a miracle has occurred. Because there's no other explanation. Now of course, it's fair to say that flightless animals don't just fall from the sky. But one can't simply assert that a miracle has occurred simply because there's no other explanation. That would be, and is, an outrageous argument from ignorance. It is, in essence, we don't know, therefore God. Anyhow, as it turns out, we now actually do have an adequate explanation, which, by the way, perfectly demonstrates why arguments from ignorance are flawed. This explanation is, quite simply, a tornado that's formed over a body of water, otherwise known as a waterspout, that's then hurled water and aquatic animals over land.
This event might be highly improbable, but it does not conform to an independently given pattern. Fish just randomly drop out of the sky, so there's no justification that this is the result of intelligent design. So we cannot infer that this is a miracle. Note that with the intelligent design criteria we could show that a supernatural intelligent cause is responsible for a certain event, even though it is not technically a miracle. Think about the solar eclipse and the earthquake during the crucifixion of Jesus. You could make a case that this is highly improbable to occur at that specific moment in time, and that it conforms to an independently given pattern, because these events have religious significance. At the same time, one could show that the earthquake and the solar eclipse were part of the natural chain of cause and effect, part of the great interlocked event, as Lewis would call it. A supernatural agent could set up nature in such a way so that certain events would happen at certain moments in time. This would not be a direct act of a supernatural agent in the natural world, but an indirect act. In this video we take a look at the direct acts of a supernatural agent in the natural world. What we've seen is that the design inference is necessary, but not sufficient to justify that a miracle has occurred. Now we move on to the next criterion. Once we've established that the event has an intelligent cause, we need to gather as many facts surrounding the event as possible. Then we need to apply abductive reasoning to determine which explanation is the best. Abductive reasoning is basically an inference to the best explanation. By comparing how different hypotheses explain certain facts, you can determine which hypothesis can explain them the best. The more facts you have, the less plausible hypotheses remain. This kind of reasoning is applied when, for example, forensic scientists investigate a murder. The more facts they gather, such as fingerprints, motives, or different suspects and a murder weapon, the less suspects remain. Eventually they have gathered enough evidence to end up with only one probable suspect. You could say that when you investigate a miracle, in most cases you have two main suspects, the supernatural agent and the human agent. Just like with the criteria for intelligent design, it is important to have a priority order of explanation. We start with the simple explanation, which in this case is the human agent, and then we move on to the next explanation. So if we cannot gather enough information, then the standard explanation is that a human agent is responsible. Of course, even when we conclude this, it may still be the case that a supernatural agent is involved, because he could make things appear as if it were the act of a human agent. The point is that if we cannot eliminate a human explanation, then the event cannot be known to be a miracle, but it could still be the case. It is important to notice that when a miracle has not occurred and humans claim to have performed one or witnessed one, then they are either deluded because of some bias or they are lying. So whenever a person claims to have seen or performed a miracle, then there are only 3 plausible explanations. He was either deluded, lying, or he spoke the truth. There are 2 important criteria to determine whether we are justified to eliminate a human explanation for a certain event, such as when a person lies or has a bias. The first criterion is it is highly improbable that humans can do it. And the second is there is no bias or ulterior motive. Let me explain these criteria by giving an illustration about so-called faith healers. Unfortunately, there are many false teachers who claim that God does a miracle whenever we just claim it and believe it. This is called the name it and claim it message.
If you are Indian, you are hard of hearing, I want you to come up here. You, come here. You hard of hearing?
This man says he's partially deaf in one ear, which Pastor Sean is quick to express as a more major affliction.
You can't hear nothing. Oh my God. Somebody shout, be open! Be open!
A leg that grows or the deaf that hear. Darren Brown and others have shown that these examples don't pass the first criterion. It is not highly improbable that a human agent can do this. There is a reasonable explanation as to how these kinds of faith healers could pull off this trick. Darren Brown explains it.
After the healing moment, it seems as if something miraculous has occurred. To prove the man's deaf ear had been healed, Pastor Sean had him face away so he couldn't lip read and had his assistant block his good ear. But from this camera angle, you can see that the man's good ear isn't being blocked at all. So maybe it's not such a miracle.
They also don't pass the second criterion. Most of them clearly have an ulterior motive. They are able to gain financial wealth, power and fame because of their practice as a faith healer. Therefore, we can conclude that these faith healers are not performing miracles.
How exactly can we distinguish a miracle from an unlikely natural occurrence that we are yet to comprehend?
If all of the following 4 criteria apply to an event, then we are justified to conclude that a miracle has occurred. The event is highly improbable. The event conforms to an independently given pattern. It is highly improbable that humans can cause this event. And last, there is no bias or ulterior motive. With these criteria, we can eliminate all natural and human explanations. Because of this, only an act of a supernatural agent remains. If you find these criteria reasonable, then stay tuned for my next video, because I will apply them to the most important miracle claim the world has ever heard: the resurrection of Jesus.